Good morning.
I'm Braden,
I'm downtown Logan Brown.
and this is the Pickleball Effect podcast.
All right, folks, today we're talking PPA, creating a brand new rule for ProXR. Who knew? Paddle Grit Gate is back. We got a brand new segment of 3.0 to 5.0. Should you be driving or dropping? But first, we're going to jump into a special interview with a friend of ours, Daryl Wang from Vatic Pro. You may have played with his paddles. Now you get to meet the legend behind the brand. Let's get into that first, and we'll take you into the rest of the pod.
So joining Logan and I, we have Daryl Wang, the owner and founder of Vatic Pro. Daryl, super happy to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Excited to talk about some of these things in the paddle world.
Yeah, we want to kind of jump through your journey a little bit, how you got to where you are. From my perspective, so you started, when did you open business? This was like late 2022, right?
Yeah, so I remember I first made a logo in like September of last year, so we're coming up on the 1 year mark.
Nice.
Wow.
So you started in September. I remember when you were coming on board, but like from then to now, like right now, I feel like you're one of the top challenger brands to the incumbents. If these bigger brands, are worried about anyone, I think it's Vatic Pro, taking some of their space, and it's been fun following your journey. And I want to kind of dive into how you got to where we are today, because there are so many brands that start, like pickleball brands that start every month. Like if you follow, there's like a website that shows all the USAP approved paddles that come through.
Mm-hmm.
And like daily, there's like a handful of new paddles of brands I've never heard of pop up on there. And a lot of these, just pop up and fall away, pop up and fall away. But you broke through. And so, and it was really, really impressive what you done. And so I kind of want to just go through your timeline a little bit, how you got to where we are today. So from the very beginning, your introduction of the Flash and the V7, they were thermoform paddles. This was kind of before thermoform paddles was hot. So you opened doors, or you made the logo in September. Like, did you have paddles concepts then? Or like at what point did you have a paddle in hand that you knew you were going to sell?
Yeah, so my initial idea for wanting to make a paddle, and especially as a business, I was like, if we're going to do something, we might as well do something that's not already prevalent on the market. Since at that time, EULA had like the Hyperion. So if you're going to go into the market, it should be somewhat at least comparable to that. And it's a combination of luck, a good bit of research, and then also timing. So we, just like everyone else, were working with several different ideas. And at that time, the elongated shape was pretty popular. We were talking to some factories, and one of them just happened to, they didn't really know what it was called at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So what we know now is thermoforming, but at that time, it's just something with the carbon fiber wrapped around the surface just to add extra surface tension. There was no word for it. And then we kind of got samples of that and played with it. And I knew it was good. I wasn't even a good player back then. I had just started playing for several months. So I had some of my friends use it, and they could tell that something was a little bit upgraded from, at that time, let's say a DUPR Warrior Edge. But no one could really put their finger on it. I knew like what it was in terms of technology, but it was just difficult to get people to understand what it was, because there was no real substitute to like the sandwich paddle. The Gen 1 was everywhere. So
right.
When you have this newer concept, it's kind of foreign to some people, and eventually it caught on, but in the initial stage, it was definitely pretty difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. With every journey, there's always gonna be a little bit of luck. I feel like when raw carbons first started to become a thing, like the brand Carbon CRBN kind of benefited from that technology and popularizing that. So you coming in with this new tech, I would imagine played a big role of getting where you are today. And because like a lot of brands, like the new brands are popping out now, they're all introducing thermoform, but it's like, it's kind of old news now.
Yeah.
And so with you being so early with that tech, I'm guessing it played a big part of it. Got your name out there. Like there was like 2 or 3 other brands that are kind of doing it at the same time, and you were just part of every conversation. You were all over Reddit. But you also, one thing you did differently than some of these other brands, was like you got a pro on board. You got Spencer on really quick. So when did he come on board, and like how do you think he played a role? Maybe like legitimizing your brand a little bit.
Yeah, so Spencer's been huge. It was never supposed to work out the way it was. It was very fortunate for both sides because initially when I started, I kind of had this vision for a brand that I wanted to build. And obviously the first step in having credibility is having a pro with at least some sort of, reputation to use your paddle. But I was DMing almost every pro that I could find on Instagram, like even if they weren't, on the PPA tour. Some of them were like fringe level players or even below that. And a lot of them actually, they didn't even want to play with the paddle, like they were just sticking to what they know, even if they didn't have a deal, which I couldn't really understand because why not try it at least? So Spencer, it was really fortuitous because his contract with Gamma was ending.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know like Gamma wasn't making the best paddles at the time. He was using this super weird Gamma paddle. It had like a 6-inch handle.
Oh yeah,
have you seen this
or whatever?
Yeah. Yes. And then we hopped on a Zoom call and things kind of worked itself out from there. I always had this idea of having a pro because that's kind of what separates like our brands from some of the others. It gives people who buy your paddles like more comfortability using it. The example that I like to say is kind of like XS Pack, where you're not as confident when you pull it out at a court, like a local rec court. Like you're somewhat embarrassed. I always wanted to have a paddle that people were like proud to kind of use and show to their friends. And having pros is a big deal. Like if you look at Eula, having like the same paddle that Ben Johns uses is kind of a flex in some ways. So
it's validating.
Yeah, it's validating for sure. So it all goes into like brand building from an early position instead of doing it later.
Yeah, dude, I love that. That makes a lot of sense because as I was thinking through some of these questions, I wanted to ask you that. And I felt like Spencer played a role, but I wasn't really sure what that role is. And like you articulated that really well. And that makes a lot of sense because you want to be proud of what you play. You want it to look good, to feel good as you go. And like, that's what brings that element in, that's smart. You were on top of that. And was that your intention bringing him on board? Like that was why you found, or you wanted a Spencer type person?
Yes, that's why I wanted Spencer on board, just to have a pro to start with. I actually have a very different viewpoint on having pro players on a team as opposed to some of the larger companies. So it's really nice to have maybe 1 or 2 players, but the more that you have, it's really diminishing returns as a brand, especially if you're a smaller company, because the upfront investment to having players, especially these days when they're demanding more and more as pickleball becomes more popular, it can be overwhelming for a smaller brand, especially if you're not established in any sales channel, because realistically speaking, like what does a pro player do in terms of sales? It's extremely hard to quantify. And in most cases, I would say that they don't sell paddles at all, especially if you're a fringe player or even some of the middling of the pack PPA players. They're not pushing paddles. That's not their job, right? And only so many people actually watch PPA tournaments that it's really difficult to justify spending more money on pros, but having 1 or 2 when you're first starting, I think is pretty important.
Yeah, it's cool. It's funny enough, Braden and I are actually both in marketing. And so I understand what you're doing there. How much of, you don't have to speak specifics and numbers, but one of the things we wanted to learn more about, because we both watched your interview with Building Pickleball, which was amazing. But I thought it could be cool to both go into the paddle technology, which we're going to do in a minute. But also talk more about like how you broke into the scene, because the deal with Spencer makes total sense. But was that the real breakthrough? Because it started to pop up all over my courts. And I'm curious what your marketing strategy was to get the buzz and the word out.
Yes.
In that wave format that you did.
So I would say that plays into luck. Like I can easily attribute one thing to why we broke into the scene, and it's Chris Olsen.
Okay.
Like that guy in his first, since the Carbon 1X video, has kind of grouped us into that, group with 60 Legacy, etc. And it's not a coincidence that the companies that he continues to talk about are generally spoken highly of in the Reddit forums, Discord, Facebook Marketplace. And it kind of just grew with that. There was also, I remember that time, like during delamination, when there was just such a hot topic. Like, yes, it was somewhat negative, but it also ended up being a great publicity stunt, I would say, for some of these smaller companies that almost painted some of the larger companies in a worse light, and people were more willing to learn about and support companies like ours. I would say that early 2023 period was instrumental in us getting our name out, and then just treading like the right way. There's a lot of obstacles. You have to navigate it correctly in order to have customers view you in a better light and want to support your products. But yeah,
Awesome.
Chris Olsen is probably one of the largest contributing factors just because of his influence in the paddle market. I mean, Braden's also been huge since we've somewhat partnered up later this year, but I think Chris really got us like our foot through the door, and then we've taken it since then and been careful, and smart with who we've been working with.
Sweet.
Yeah. So continuing through the timeline, like you kind of break through, you're recognized, and then you release a second series. So you have the Prism Flash and the Prism V7. So I remember talking to you about these. You had sent me a couple samples. You were telling me what, how they were made and stuff. And I went and played with them. I was planning on doing a review, and I was like, Daryl, these are really good. You should not be charging $100 for these. Like you could make more money off these. Like these are nice. But it's always been your philosophy of bringing, high quality paddles at a more affordable price. But like, this is like kind of to a new level. Like that's like a mantra I see in a lot of new brands. But with your Prism Flash series, it's a little different, and people are starting to recognize it.
Yeah.
So I wrote this down, what you told me when we were chatting. So I was like, Daryl, you need to charge more for these. These are really, really nice. And this was like a month or so before you launched them. And you're like, oh, what was it? You said, these are going to implode the industry. So it's been 3 months since the launch of the Prism series. They've been super successful. They just keep gaining more and more steam.
Yeah.
My video review of the Prism, like it just is steady. Like usually I'll drop a review and it lasts about a month or so.
Big
but
spike, and then
it just keeps growing. People keep watching. The awareness of this paddle keeps going up. I'm playing in Tournament of Champions next week, the PPA event, and I'm playing with the Prism Flash in doubles, the 16, and I'm playing with the 14 for singles. And so I'm a huge fan of the paddle. But what do you think, dude? Like, how's it going? We're 3 months in. Have you imploded the industry?
I would say that we have maybe not imploded, but we've definitely had a little bit of influence in where the market is trending. I don't think it's a coincidence that paddles are getting cheaper. I would say that we have somewhat of a role to play in that. And the reason being is there's an excess of greed, I would say. Maybe that's not the best way to put it. In the pickleball industry, people are kind of charging over $200 is highway robbery, right? People are now aware of that. Maybe 2 years ago they weren't, but they're not crazy expensive to make. They do use some more expensive materials, especially for carbon fiber paddles. But we really wanted to have something. This was one of our goals when we originally started, something that people could upgrade to like in between or right after their Amazon paddles without having to maybe go to like a Franklin Ben John signature, because no one's justifying going from a $40 Amazon set to a Hyperion back in the day, right? Because it's just so much of a jump. So I see a lot of players that use the Prism Flash as like their first upgrade, and I think that's exactly what we wanted, and we have changed the industry in that way. It's like it could be your first upgrade and also your last, right? Which was our initial goal. And $99 is a pretty insane price. It's $89 with a coupon, but it's more about spreading the joy of playing pickleball and using a nicer paddle that you can compete with rather than spending a lot of money on one. So that's just pretty much what we set out to do, and I think we're on the right track in terms of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are starting to realize, not only the quality of this paddle and how good it is, but like just being more aware of prices in general. Like, for example, Diamond released their Warrior Edge, or is releasing it. I can't remember, but like it's like tech wise, I think the Prism Flash is like more advanced than what they're using. Like they're not even using foam edge. I like the way the Prism Flash plays more, and they're charging like $230 for it. And people I think realize, okay, I'm paying for a brand really at that point. And and I think this kind of goes back to what you said earlier. Like when I buy $100 paddle, for the most part, those brands I'm buying them from, like I'm going to be embarrassed pulling that paddle out, but like I'm not embarrassed pulling this paddle out.
Yeah.
And that kind of speaks to what you've built and the brand you've built. And so that's pretty cool. But yeah, dude, love the paddles. I still play with it. It's just, especially with tournaments like the 16, it's just so easy to control. I'm very confident with it. In tournaments, you always feel a little nerves. And so with that paddle, it's just easy to connect with, easy to control and hit the shots I want to hit. It's not the most powerful out there, but like it's not what it's meant to be. It's a control paddle and it does that really well. But yeah, big fan of it. Logan, have you hit the prisms yet?
Yeah, I have, and I really like it. What I wanted to learn more about was more like, I think our audience loves the tech piece that we bring up on the podcast too. So and I'm sorry for missing this name, the one with the hole down by the throat. Is that the
Alchemy?
The
Alchemy, yeah. All right. So I want to learn more about the Prism Flash, and here's how I want to describe it, and you can tell me what would happen. So I've heard on the courts from people that with the Alchemy, you can actually rip out the edge guard that's in the throat hole, but I haven't seen anybody do it yet. People are just like, I heard you can rip this out, and I'm like, I don't know what would happen if you did. So I want to know what's the difference in what you would see in that hole around the perimeter, the edge, versus the Prism Flash if I took all the edge guard off. What's really the difference in material or the way it's produced?
Yeah, so we're getting into all the specifics. If you take off the edge guard of an Alchemy, first of all, it only takes like 5 to 10 seconds to take it out and put it back in as well. So what you see in that hole is basically the edge of a carbon fiber thermoform paddle.
Yeah, wrapped all the way around, right? So it's like one seamless thing. Yeah,
it's all the carbon fiber. It's like hardened. It looks kind of messy. It's not perfectly smooth like the surfaces. That's the whole reason that people have edge guards, and the reason that we have the edge guard for the hole is just because aesthetically speaking, you wouldn't necessarily be able to sell a paddle like that, even though you would be more than able to play with it. So that's pretty much what it is. And for our thermoform paddles and the Alchemy, there are several layers of carbon fiber under that. And then for our Prism series, it's just a singular foam layer with carbon fiber encasing it inside. So it's just a matter of using more heat and more pressure to create additional layers of carbon fiber, and that increases surface tension and also power.
So when I played with the Prism Flash, I know this is going to sound funny, but compared to other paddles that I've played, it almost felt like, the way I describe it is full. I don't hit it and it doesn't feel like I have any kind of hollowness. It just feels like it's kind of like not too spongy either. I don't know. Does this make sense, guys? Like full is the way I would describe it. Why is that? Why does it feel that way compared to the thermoform series?
The thing is, it's actually just because of the manufacturing process. I can't go into like too many specifics, but when we're making the Prism, it's almost a Gen 1 paddle, like an existing Gen 1 paddle. So let's say like the original Carbon 1. And then the foam is actually added after the fact. So you have the normal paddle and then you add the foam and then you put the edge guard on. Versus a thermoform paddle, you're making the entire paddle from scratch with the foam already in there as a layer. So when you're heating a thermoform paddle, it's actually raw carbon fiber that has not been texturized. It looks like tape. It's just a paddle with tape on it. It looks like electrical tape. It's not an actual playing surface. And then you create the raw carbon fiber surface through an extended amount of time under pressure. And the Prism is not made like that. It's just a normal paddle with foam in it. And then you encase it with a single layer of carbon fiber.
Sweet. I'm impressed now. Like a paddle engineer here.
It's just, small differences make, like you can feel it during play, right? So it's all the small changes that actually have a big impact.
And then like you mentioned on the Building Pickleball podcast about longevity of these paddles. Is there much of a difference in the longevity you should expect out of Prism Flash versus Alchemy or other thermoforms?
Yeah, Braden was saying this in one of his earlier podcasts too about the longevity of thermoform paddles. I still think that the notion that those paddles should last like over a year is a bit incorrect because of like how intense it is to make a singular paddle, right? You kind of you need that manufacturing process to make such a strong and powerful paddle. Obviously, when you make something that strong, you're going to have to sacrifice something. And in this case, it's a bit of longevity. I'm not saying they're going to break down on you after a few weeks, but I still think that 3 to 6 months is quite normal, especially considering how much people play. That's also a factor. But after 6 months, you're going to want to replace a surface anyways, right? You're not going to have nearly as much grit on the surface. So it's not just the core or anything that's breaking down. That's just how long you want to have one of those thermoform carbon fiber paddles if you want to compete and if you want to like have it play to the best of its ability. But the Prism, it's not going to have any deterioration aside from the carbon fiber surface.
Yep.
I mean, the heat makes the core brittle on the thermoform paddles. That's just how it, like it's just physics, right? The cores that companies use or factories use are not resistant to the temperature that is required for thermoforming. To a certain extent, it has to be cut to the exact right size in order to prevent delamination, which can be difficult and which we try to do always, but that's kind of where I stand. I think the longevity for the Prism is a bit longer, but thermoform paddles still shouldn't be lasting over a year, I don't think.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
I like the insight.
Yeah, those are great insights. And that's something that a lot of people understand. And if you're playing even like super regular, I don't think people like the pros, I don't think people realize how often they switch paddles. Like it is very often. And even at the amateur level, switching paddles at, 3 to 4 months isn't unheard of. And I think should be considered more often, because it's funny when I'm talking to people about like advising paddles, I often hear, I want a paddle that's going to last me, over a year. and things like that. And like, yeah, you can play with paddles for that long. You just lose performance. And it depends, if you're a rec player, and the grit wears out, like maybe it's not a big deal. But if you're competing and you want, the most performance out of a paddle, like you probably have to switch it out more than you think. And it's no brand is immune to that. It's just the way it is.
But speaking of grit, like you gotta help me out here, Daryl. I'll like run into people and they know that I'm doing a podcast and have like a newsletter. And so every now and then they'll just like kind of drill me with questions about specifics, like technical things about a paddle. And I really don't know that much. So I want to know from you. They all say, oh, this is a thermoform paddle with Toray 700, T700, carbon fiber. Like, is that really the best we could get right now? Like, let's put money aside. Mm-hmm. Is there like a material that's 5 times better than that? We just don't use it because of cost?
No, there's no better material because the cost doesn't really matter when it's such thin sheets, you know what I mean? So for the factories, they can still achieve that, even if it's not, Japanese Toray, which doesn't even matter. We can still use carbon fiber and get the best materials that we want. I mean, you're seeing carbon fiber used in like automobiles, F1 race cars. So if there were a better material for paddles, it would probably, already be known. And I've tested all kinds of materials, right? There's always companies releasing like this new technology, quote unquote. And I just look at them like, yeah, like I've tested that, 3 months ago and it was horrible.
Trash.
Yeah.
What's your take on Kevlar? Like Kevlar seems to be popping up in conversations now. Have you tested that? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I've tested it. I've tested the Kevlar, quote unquote. It's Nomex in the core. It's horribly loud. It is pretty poppy. It feels like pretty springy, but it just sounds horrible. And then I've also tested Kevlar infused surfaces. So it's Kevlar woven into the carbon fiber surface. It's like a single layer of Kevlar, 2 layers of carbon fiber.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
It feels exactly the same. Like it's not any different. Like aside from marketing purposes, if you're looking at like playing maybe like, I don't know, 100 RPM on a spin, like 30 extra days of longevity.
When you're doing R&D and you're like testing paddles, do you have a group of people that you kind of pass it through and get thoughts on? Or is it mostly just like...
It's me and you now, Braden.
Just you hitting paddles?
The thing, it's rarely ever me, actually. So I'm not one that's amazing with like putting how I feel in terms of a paddle into words and like quantifying it. I have friends with different backgrounds, most of them in engineering or like something along those lines, that are much better at reporting back to me in terms of what works on a paddle and what doesn't. I also have pro players who, they test the durability of paddles because they're playing for hours every
Yeah,
day.
that's a good way
So,
to do it.
I mean, if I want to know durability, I can send it to some guys and they'll let me know pretty quickly. But in terms of how a paddle feels, I'll test it at home a little bit, hitting it against the wall and playing with it a little bit. And I will know pretty quickly, but generally I give it to a few people as well.
At what point do you share a paddle with the pros, like with your pro players or your team?
Mm-hmm. I don't really have any guidelines for that. I actually tend to give it to them as soon as I get them if it's something that we're actually seriously considering. Like I've gotten Nomex and Kevlar cores and surfaces just to mess around with at home. Like I would never give a pro player that because I know they're bad. So that's just like something. If we have like a new shape, I'll send it to the players immediately, like a new thickness. They really like trying those out.
Yeah.
But if it's super experimental, I tend not to waste their time because pros also like to stick with the same paddle because they're preparing, right? So that's not something you want to just, make them do.
Yeah, there's definitely some power in sticking with the same paddle for a bit. Once you find one, just stick with it. Like there's no reason to switch all the time if you don't need to.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Daryl, you have to. Oh, sorry, Brandon.
No, go ahead, Logan.
No, I just thought this is a good segue into. I heard something you mentioned in the Building Pickleball interview, but I don't know if it was like blatantly said. The definition of Vatic. You were talking about how you came up with the name. If I got this right, it means the word actually means describing or predicting the future. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like we've hit a plateau in innovation right now with paddles? And if, regardless of your answer, where do you think it can go in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So I've been dabbling in some technologies that I think will have a good effect on the future of pickleball. But if we're looking at technology, there's always room to go because small changes can actually have a very immediate effect on paddles. So let's say, for example, EULA first adding the foam and then thermoform paddles coming out. They're actually very subtle changes from the original Gen 1 paddles that have been out for a while, right? So just switching from a fiberglass surface to a carbon fiber surface makes a big difference. So you never really know. It's hard to tell. It could be just one small idea or that really works well in practice. And then everyone runs with that. So it's hard to say. I think there's still room for innovation in this space, and we're definitely working to be on top of that as well.
I have a question on the innovation side of things. So you mentioned earlier that the factory you work with, kind of brought up this thermoform thing that they've been working on. You're like, oh, let me try it. So at this stage, like, are the factories pitching ideas? Are you working with them? I know you have a close relationship with the manufacturers than most brands do, and so I imagine it's a little bit of give and take. But like, are they pitching you ideas? Do you have ideas you throw at them? How does that work?
Yeah, so this is something that's really not talked about, but factories are the ones that develop all the ideas. So if anyone says that they've been working to develop XYZ, it's really most of the time not the case, whereas it's something that the factory has been experimenting with and has offered to a company or an agent. Unless you're, let's say, Selkirk or EULA and you have your own factory or your own private label factory that you can actually experiment with. But for every other company, it's not really something that they can do, because if you have this insane idea and you want to use this really cool material or cool core, like, well, how are you going to mass produce it, right? So the factory is the one that holds all the cards in terms of innovation and mass production. So usually they're the ones that they're always looking to innovate as well. They're motivated in that regard just to make money and have more people order from them, right? Because there's competition within factories as well. So that's something that I would throw out there.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's an insight or a take I really haven't heard before.
Yeah, no one really wants to admit it, right?
Yeah,
like,
but
no, I didn't do anything, and the factory is the one doing all the heavy lifting. But it really is the case most times.
I mean, that's why we see a lot of very similar, paddles out there. There's just small nuances between them, but like branding, positioning, those things all play a big role. And like the way you positioned your brand and built it has, is far and above all these other new entrants that have come in. And there's a reason why you're here and they're not. It's very calculated. Like you say, it was lucky, and I'm sure there was some luck in there, but like just hearing your story, like it was calculated, you know,
Mhm.
you didn't just get here by chance. And so it's fun to hear that story. Last question I have for you, Dale, before you leave is you recently posted a video. You're partnering with another, like, it's like a media company, right? You're doing this video series called 00 Start. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so 00 Start was a project that I did with my friend Simon, who has been in the entertainment industry pretty much his whole life, and he has the pickleball bug, you know, and he loves to travel, explore, and also play pickleball. So we had this chance opportunity to meet up in New York and film that project. It ended up being so much better than we thought, and think of it as more of like a Anthony Bourdain travel show, but instead of eating food, they're playing pickleball.
There you go.
And New York was kind of the setting for them to first initiate the idea and kind of pitch it to other people. So if you want to be a part of that idea and you have, you know, investors behind you, let us know, and then maybe we can make a series out of it. But for now,
Sweet.
we'll see where it goes.
Well, very cool. Daryl, thanks for joining us. Really enjoyed our conversation. Big fan of what you're doing. Obviously, I endorse your brand very heavily. I really love your flash paddles. If anyone's interested, I'll put my reviews in the show notes. You can go check it out and use my discount code, the Prism Flash. Easily the best deal on the market. I compete the 5.0 level and still play with it, and not ashamed to pull a $90 paddle out.
That's right.
But it's good stuff, man. Keep it up.
Yep. Thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, dude.
Yep.
All right, so we're back. It's a great convo with Daryl. Really appreciate Daryl jumping on with us. Let's talk paddles for a moment. Let's just keep going on paddles because Zane Navratil,
it's never ending.
It's never ending. I mean, he went on the Pickle Pod this week and basically announced that PPA has put in new sanctions just for ProXR.
I know. Can you believe that?
I mean, I can. I hear everyone saying like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they would do this." This is still like a startup. You know, they're just figuring it out, like, and they want to try to make it as fair as they can.
Is this fair though?
I don't think they could even feasibly.
I don't think everyone
test
knows
everyone's paddle.
Give us the high level of how they're treating ProXR these next tournament.
Yeah. So essentially, the way it used to work is that as long as your paddle was pre-approved on the market, right? So they have a testing standard. You're pre-approved coming out of production. The pros can use those paddles. Now, if you can get challenged, quarterfinals and forward, so quarters, semis, championships, if another pro feels that your paddle is maybe over a grit limit or it's delammed or something, they can challenge you then, and they'll take the paddle at the end of the game, go through all the testing, and then give you a pass or fail, which we talked about in the last podcast. So this time, what PPA has introduced is that ProXR has to be tested, I suppose, for now moving forward. I'm not sure how long, but they have to be tested immediately. So any pro using it has to be tested on the spot before the tournament starts.
Before the tournament starts, yeah.
Yeah. And
only ProXR, no other brand.
Right, only ProXR
has to go through this.
They're kind of in like they're not in jail yet. They're just on suspension or something, like they're getting a slap on the wrist here for maybe pushing the rules a bit. But what I think is not fair, actually, I'll tell you what's not fair. They have to meet a requirement of, I don't know what the grit thing is called, but it's a score of 40. They have to meet 40 pre-tournament. But if your paddle is
like challenge
your paddle, it can hit a score up to 43. Did you know that?
No, I didn't hear that part. So they're holding them to a different standard than everyone else?
Only on the
Only
pre-test.
on the pre-test.
Same standard if they get challenged again, at the quarters or the semis. But
it doesn't make sense to me that they would want to. I mean, I get there's a lot of concern and talk about the ProXR, but they're not the only super gritty paddle. Like there's others out there. If you're going to treat one way, like you have to treat them all that way. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me to have.
But it's a startup, Braden.
One than the other.
We're in a bad spot when the sponsor
this one just doesn't make sense. And PPA only seems to respond when there's like chatter about something. They're very rarely like proactive about something. It's only when something like goes viral that they decide to do something.
A little drastic.
In this case, it just seems like a silly response to me.
I agree. All right, let's keep going. You just launched a pretty sweet video last week at this point. Lead tape and how it changes your paddle. I use lead tape, but I don't even know really what I'm doing. I just kind of fake it till I make it and hope it feels good. But what were your kind of key findings there? And then we'll let folks go watch the full video.
Yeah, so I've done like 3 or 4 paddle or just experiments with lead tape now. I've done one on how tape affects the power, the swing weight, and this most recent one was looking at how lead tape affects twist weight.
Mhm.
So when depending, I just put lead tape in a bunch of different locations on the paddle and then just measured how it adjusted the twist weight, or which is right, like the stability and kind of forgiveness rating of a paddle. And I found that putting the tape on the sides of the paddle is going to have the highest impact on twist weight. So a lot of the most common placement of twist weight is like on the bottom corners, kind of by the throat. And I always just thought that was the best place to improve the stability of a paddle. But it turns out that the side is actually the best if you're looking for that stability and like adding a little more twist weight and forgiveness to a paddle. And so, but that does increase the swing weight a little more. I need to do another experiment where I combine, I look at both the swing weight and twist weight in unison on different placements and kind of just find that ultimate sweet spot. But I have a hunch that it's going to be somewhere where like you cover the bottom corners and it goes up the sides a little bit. I feel like that could potentially be the best spot to put lead tape for to increase the swing weight as much as you can, or increase the twist weight as much as you can without increasing the swing weight too dramatically. Whereas previously the most popular spot was like kind of the corner down by the throat. But we're onto something here. I think we might find a better placement for that. But something I'm going to do in the future. I love messing with lead tape, and that one was just another test I did with some interesting results. So go check that one out.
Where are you putting your lead tape?
Well, I have been doing it on like kind of the throat on the corners.
Yeah,
but I'm
me
going to
too.
start experimenting, putting it a little bit higher and see how that feels.
Are you just going to extend, or are you going to literally move the placement of the same 5 inches or whatever you're
using?
Take
the 5 inches and just move it up a little bit. And so my next experiment will just see, okay, yes, that's going to improve twist weight, but is it going to affect the swing weight? Is it going to bring it up too high? So I need to find that balance, between those two. But we'll find it, and it's hopefully we can find the ultimate sweet spot for lead tape placement. But on the review front, so nothing coming out this week. The following week, I'm going to release a review for the Rhombus R1 Nova.
Excited for that.
Doing, I'm excited. This is an interesting one because they are doing something different. It's like a thermoform style, but it's a little different. But I'll speak to the nuances there when I release that video. And then after that, I'm going to do a review of the new Engages that are coming out, the Pursuit Pros. So Engage is sending me a handful of those. I should get those this week. So I'll dump the stats into my paddle database so you can check those out. But the review, it'll take me, it takes me about 2.5 or so weeks to put a full review together. So I'm going to start working on that one next. And then my brother, his name's Riley. He lives in Utah. He kind of does some of this Pickleball Effect stuff with me. He's done a couple of reviews for me in the past, and I'm going to the Tournament of Champions in Utah this week. I'm going to drop some paddles off at his house for him to review. So he does a great job. He's about a 4 or 5 player. He just does written reviews because videos are a little trickier, but he's going to put together a written review for the ProXR Zane paddles and potentially a few others. I'm not sure which ones yet, but he's gonna do that. And then while I'm there with him, I'm gonna do some spin tests and some things around the ProXR because I know people are interested in that. And then the last thing I'm working on for paddles is I'm reworking my hot list. So I have a list on my website that has my favorite paddles for control, all court, and power. And I have them like ranked. I have like either a gold or a silver award. And so I last updated that at the end of 2022. A lot has changed since then. And so I'm going in there and just kind of slowly reworking my list of what the best paddles are in each of those categories. So I'll announce that when that gets finished. But just starting that process, that'll probably take me a month or so. That takes a lot of work. But that ends our Paddle Babble section. We're going to jump to 3.0 to 5.0 now.
3.0 to 5.0. All right. So first, this has been popping up. Actually, it popped up twice. I had somebody on a different day approach me, and then yesterday or Saturday approach me as well. So do you play let serves in rec play? So the let serve is when the ball is served, it hits the net cord, but it falls into the appropriate service box.
Okay, yeah, this is just a rules question. So at the pro level, that's a redo. At the amateur level, you play it. So this tournament I'm going to play in next week. I'm playing in 5-0. If that happens, you play on.
Play on. Love it. Good. All right. So let's get into drives and drops. You into that?
Yeah. Tell me what your question is there.
All right. So we're going to use my own experience again. I would consider myself to have a pretty decent drive because I come from tennis background. And if I can get it in the court and over the net, I think it's pretty good. But I never measured it, so I have no idea what my RPMs are, my speed, but I think it's decent. However, I was internally kind of measuring my success rate of getting drives in, meaning I would just pay attention to how often in a game I'm hitting a drive and how often I missed it or made it, meaning just in the court, over the net, in play. And I was like, I'm roughly like 50% on that shot. And then I kind of on drives. And then I kind of did the same thing on drops and found that I was just more effective at landing a drop in play without getting completely crushed. Like not something that's like, up at the head so somebody can slam it back at me, but a decent shot that gives me potential to move up the court.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking another 4 or 5 player their thoughts on it. And he told me he's kind of personally going like 80% drops and he just wants to move up the court. And so I want to know your thoughts, at your level and what you're seeing out there with other players and tournaments. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, so drive versus drop is a bit nuanced. There's not really like you should drive more or you should drop more answer because it's very situational, which is not the answer everyone wants to hear, right? It's a little more complicated.
Right. Depends.
So, depends, right? So I'll talk about some of the depends situations. I did find some stats I was going to share around the percentage of drives versus drops for pros.
Yeah, hit me with these
just to
metrics.
show you like that there is strategy behind it, and there is this depends factor. So looking at Anna Bright in her women's doubles final, she was playing with Anna Lee. This is at Takia, a week and a half ago or so. So
now we know you don't listen to Riley Newman's content. It's Takea.
Takea, sorry. So she hit, or 40% of her shots were drops.
All right, 40%. Okay.
40%. So she drove more than she dropped. And then in her mixed doubles final, so she's playing with James Ignatowicz. This was, I forget which tournament, but this was,
I think you said Seattle, right?
Seattle. Okay, so Seattle a couple weekends ago. So she's playing with James, and she hit 75% of her thirds were drops. So she hit way more drops in mixed than she does in women's doubles. So she's more aggressive with drives when she's playing women's. In mixed, she's a little more passive with her drives. So there's some strategy. There's some reason behind that. And then to kind of further point this or solidify my point, this is Ben Johns' numbers. So when he played mixed against Georgia and JW Johnson, he hit 90% drops. So a ton of drops, wow. Way more than drives. But then when he played Anna Bright and Ignatowicz, at Seattle a little while ago, 50% were drops and 50% were drives. And so there's some things taken into account that made him, or like there's a strategy behind whether he wants to drive or drop based off who he's playing and what event they're playing in. So That's one thing to consider is like what event. Like in mixed, typically you're going to see the guy drive a lot more at the female player. But in this case, Ben hit 90% drops against JW and Georgia, and it's probably because he respects their hands. Yep. He knows that they can punish him off of a drive, whereas maybe some other players can't do that as well. So that's one factor is like who you're playing, how good are they at responding to a drive. If one of their players doesn't handle the drive well, then like pick up your drives a little bit and drive at them, and you can reward yourself with some easier drops and potentially some some shake and bakes or some free points. So one thing to consider is who you're playing. The other thing to consider is what event you're playing in. Some other things to look at is like what just what they're giving you, like what scenarios do you drive versus drop. And so if the team you're playing has are giving you weak returns, you kind of land in the middle of the court or a little fluffy, like yeah, you're going to be aggressive off that. You're going to drive it. You should attack it. So if they're giving that to you, then yeah, take advantage of it. But like when the way I kind of typically approach is I want to play the opposite of what the other team feels comfortable. Like if the other team likes to play fast, they like to speed things up, they like to counter hard, then I'm going to play softer. I'm going to hit more drops. But if they like to slow it down, they like the soft game, then I'm going to attack more. I'm going to drive it more. I just basically want to do the opposite of what they want and where they're comfortable. And so it's hard to determine that when you're playing someone you've never played before.
Right.
But like thirds is one of the like easiest things to pay attention to and change in the middle of a match or maybe in between matches, because you want to, hit a few drives, hit a few drops in the beginning of a game of somebody you've never played before, just see how they respond, see how they react, see what you get from it. And then do more of that, or of what they don't like. And so that's an easy adjustment you can make in game when you're playing a new team, because it doesn't take a lot of, it's not like a big strategy change. It's just something simple you can, pay attention to. But yeah, dude, it's just situational. It also depends on like how good you are at it. Like if you have a good drive, like utilize it. If you don't, then it sounds like you have a good drive, but you're more consistent with your drops. So take advantage of your drops, use your drops. If you're winning more points, you're getting up to the net more consistently with that, then go that route. But you do want to have both in your bag, depending on what the situation is and who you're playing against. You don't want to just do one over the other because that's all you know how to do. If you can only do one, then go develop the other shot and incorporate that into your game. So that's my thoughts there. And speaking to driving, like I want to talk about, okay, it sounds like you're going for a lot on these drives. You're 50%. Like, does the ball have to be hit hard to be a successful drive? Like,
That's a good point.
I don't think it does. So some stuff I wrote down here on that idea is if you hit it at the right time, for example, when someone's like if you're unwinding someone's stack. So if someone's stacking,
you're gonna have to explain this to me because I don't know what I've heard. They even brought it up today on the broadcast. I was like, unwinding the stack. What are they talking about?
Should bring out the board.
Yeah, bring out the board. Yeah,
we need like a sound when I bring out
board,
the
board.
So this one might be a little trickier. I wish this was magnetic, but it's not. So I got two little dots here. I'm just gonna two finger.
No.
This could get tricky. So if your team or if your opponents are stacking, so this person right here is serving, but you want this person on the other side, right? So this person
serves and slides, right?
I got this the wrong way. It's when you're receiving a ball.
Oh, okay.
So this person up here is receiving it, and then their partner is going to be standing, on the side or potentially over here. So they serve the ball to them, they return it. This person wants to be on the right, so they're going to run across the court while their partner shifts over. So this is called stacking, right? When you're returning the ball. So when this person's running over, it's a long run to get to this point, and it's an opportunity for the team down here to drive the ball at the person who is stacking. So this is called unwinding the stack. So they're coming over here. You'll see it very often that they'll just drive the ball at the person who's
running cross court,
because they can't get there as fast, right? So like that's an opportunity to drive, and it doesn't have to be hard. It's just if you can catch them moving, they're not in a stable position. Like your drive just needs to be hit decent. It doesn't have to be perfect. So there's definitely scenarios where you can just use a drive strategically. It doesn't have to be hard. It just needs to be at the right moment. So when somebody's running up and they're not in a stable spot, they're not at the net, then like drive it at them, make them hit it on the move. Or if someone is giving you a lot of space, maybe you have a really aggressive left sider who's standing middle, like punish them, go down the line. But these don't have to be perfect. They just have to be placed well, hit at the right time, targeting the right person, and you can find success. Typically I just like to drive it at the person in front of me because it's a shorter distance, it's harder to handle, and I just aim at their body because they can't counter that as hard. If you give them space, to swing,
kind of
sideways,
move, and
then they can usually do something with it. So I like to go with their body unless there's a huge gap. But it doesn't have to be hit perfect. It just needs to be hit solid, and you can increase, your success right there potentially. But yeah, it's just a mix. Go use them both depending on what they're giving you, and picking teams apart that way. But generally speaking, like I think driving is more successful, at lower levels because people can't handle the drive as well. They can't block it or punish you. As you start to move up to that like 4.045, if you just are driving without an intention, without a goal behind it, of like where you're going, why you're driving at that moment, then teams can punish you for it. So it's just being smart there. But in your case, like I would say drop it more because you're better at it, or just take a little off your drive and just use it strategically, and see where that gets you.
Good advice. On next week's episode, I want to talk about the placement of the drop. Okay, remind me.
Okay.
Let all the commenters tell me first, though. All right, so let's keep things moving. We'll go on to Joe's, average Joe's, better than average Joe's talking pros. Did you watch any of the APP this weekend?
I did watch a little bit. We saw Susanna Barr with 2 golds. We had some unexpected winners on the men's side.
Yeah,
and I don't know. There's probably some other stuff. What did you catch from it?
I watched the championship of the men's today because, well, I'll talk about the one thing I love about the championship, by the way, APP in a moment. But I've seen Andre Mick playing a little bit recently, and there's this other kid. I call him a kid. I think he's like 16 or 15. He's really young.
Klinger.
Yeah, have you met him, or is he still?
I've never met him. I've seen him play a little bit. I don't think he's medaled before, has he?
This was their first gold in doubles in the APP. So
is he? Yeah, he is 17. Kind of a stringy dude.
Yeah, but
did he get drafted?
Yeah, I was gonna say. So both CJ and Mick are playing in challenger level.
Oh, they are. Okay.
CJ's they've changed their city now, but it's the SoCal Hard Eights. Is CJ's team?
Are they new? Were they in previous seasons?
CJ was. Mick, I did not see the information that he was drafted last year. Okay. CJ was challenger last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's been around a bit, but yeah, this is some new success for him.
Yeah, which is huge. I mean, it's great. And so he's playing on the Frisco Pandas this year. So we'll see more of them. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, they beat Andre Descu and Rob Nunnery in the main draw and then beat them again in the championship. And that's what I wanted to bring up was this.
Oh, the double dip?
Well, yeah, I really like the ability to climb back. I think it's cool.
Like it?
I really like the ability to climb back because you have to win double the amount. So like they actually so when they came back to the championship, Andre Descu and Rob Nunnery beat these two in the best of 3, right? The normal game you would see. Mm-hmm. But even then, they beat them. They still have to go win again in a game of 15.
Right.
And that's where they lost, and they lost the whole thing.
It's a true double elimination.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Klinger and Mick won they made it through like the winner's bracket, and then they lost the best 2 out of 3, and then won the 1 game to 15.
Yeah. I just think that's really fun. It makes it exciting because you're like, if they lose, you're kind of like they get a second chance. And then you see these guys, like maybe your favorite doubles partner loses in the main draw. You can watch kind of them come back through and see if they can make it through the gauntlet to get back to the championship. And I just think that's a really cool dynamic.
Yeah, it's certainly from a player's perspective, they would prefer that, right? Because they get a chance to come back and medal, unlike the PPA. I enjoy it. I think it's more fun to watch, but it's very untraditional, right? Like I don't think there's another sport that's set up that way. And PPA used to do it that way, but they don't anymore. They've since kind of they've changed and gone a little more traditional.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to see it. I'd like to see it go down.
It's pretty fun to watch. Speaking of CJ, so Klinger, he's like this super unassuming kid.
Yeah.
He's only 17. He doesn't look very old. He has like this super baggy clothes, really long shorts.
He's just rocking like a t-shirt today and like a backwards Ohio
really
State
baggy. Yeah, backwards, but like the hat doesn't look like it fits him very well. And it's kind of funny.
but he's a baller, I guess.
He's a baller. He's got game. He played great. But yeah, they beat Descu and Nunnery. Like that's not an easy team. Like those are some established names.
Well, Descu almost wins every single men's doubles match.
Yeah, he's kind of the king of APP for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it was funny. He said in the post game interview CJ said that he had met Mick at some, it was some players thing they were practicing, and he was like, "Yeah, Mick wasn't very good." Andre Mick, Andre wasn't very good, but he got better. He got better. He was like, he really carried me today. He really carried me today. It's like, this is too funny. This 17-year-old kid is talking about this adult who's trying to get into pickleball. Nah, he's okay. Now they're winning championships, so more power to him.
Yeah, I don't watch the APP a ton, honestly. I watched it this weekend just because it was an off week for the PPA. Like, that's just kind of how I see their stuff. And but it is fun to see new faces, different teams. Kind of, I feel like it's kind of how players work up and kind of create names for themselves. Like, there's a lot of challenger level players on there that are making names and get some great competition in that way. And it's a great format. You get they have the double elimination, so you get more games. But yeah,
I've got a couple people that I follow there, so I'll watch or keep up with like pickleball brackets to see what they're doing.
Oh, right. Yeah, who do you follow?
So we have a local kid who I've only played with his mom and dad. I haven't played with him because he would crush me. He's still in high school. He's a senior. His name's Jaden Broderick. And he got 5th in singles this weekend.
Nice.
So he like trains kind of with their next gen team, but he's not like officially on the team. But then I got a chance to interview Jack Monroe, who did pretty well in men's doubles this weekend. And then Casey Diamond, I interviewed. He lives in Charleston, South Carolina. And then he's actually teaming up with another guy from, actually he's from like Idaho or Utah, but he lives in Greenville now. His name is Alex Lahoon. And they're teaming up in a couple of, you do know him?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we chat on Instagram all the time. He's, I think they won the first round and got spanked the next round against somebody. I can't remember who. but
he's probably like, I mean, I would imagine outside of Jaden, Alex must be the next best player in Greenville, I would imagine.
Nice.
Yeah.
The one other thing I saw from this weekend was, I can't remember the gal's name who won the singles, but she beat Davidze like pretty handedly. I can't remember her name, but I want to start following her, see how she does. Start with an S, can't remember, but anyway, a name I didn't recognize that did really well. Someone new to follow on the women's singles side. But yeah, that's that. This week we have the PPA coming to Brigham City, Utah. So this isn't far from me.
And you're going?
It's about 4 hours from where I live. So I'm going. Yeah. So I'm playing in all 3 events. I'm doing 5-0 singles, mixed, and men's. And yeah, dude, I'm excited. So my men's partner is Porter Barr. He's Anna Barr's
Oh, no way.
son.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've done some stuff. We did some stuff together 2 years ago. But we've both come a long ways. So I'm excited for this one to see how we do.
He's a content guy too. Are you guys going to do some content together?
Yeah, we need to. We've talked about it. We just haven't done anything yet. But Porter's fun. He's a stud. So that'll be fun. And then mixed, I'm doing a blind date. So this one of my buddies in Utah that I met at a tournament a long time ago, just kind of randomly texted me. He's like, "Hey, you playing mixed doubles at TOC?" I was like, "No, I couldn't find anyone." He's like, "Well, I got a friend from Hawaii that's, I think he's like related to her somehow. I can't remember what the connection is. Anyway, she's coming into play from Hawaii, and of course I had to do my research. I'm like, oh man, who is she? She looks really solid. So I haven't met her yet, but I'm really excited to play with her. Just to play another event is fun. So we're doing 5-0. We'll speak my first blind date. I haven't done something like this before. Maybe it'll be a good thing. I don't know. We'll see.
That'd be a busy weekend. Like, will you have any time to watch pros, or are you just going to be like sleeping, eating, playing?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends how well I do. Like, I could be tuning out and just be watching stuff, but I'll definitely be watching a lot, getting some film, trying to network, see if we can get some people on here. But so looking forward to that. So my very first podcast I did, I had just finished a tournament, and I was telling everyone that I was pretty deep into the tournament. I was starting to lose some energy and some focus, and a lot of people responded with some like supplements and different things to try out to keep the energy levels high. So I forget the gentleman's name, but he actually lives pretty close to me. He's like, "Hey, Braden, I live in Meridian," which is like 30 minutes from me.
Okay.
He's like, go look up Hammer Nutrition. So they have like this electrolyte supplement and this like almost like a meal replacement thing to kind of keep the carbohydrate intake up. throughout the day. It's meant to give you energy if you're doing exercise that's 3 hours or longer. Anyway, so I'm trying out these supplements. Hopefully,
sponsored by Hammer Nutrition.
Yeah, but
use code PB Studio.
Trying.
To save.
I do read the comments. I take what you guys say. But anyways, I'm trying that out. So hopefully I can keep the energy up. So it's going to be pretty grueling. If assuming we make some decent runs, like it could be really long days. It's going to be really hot. But yeah, really excited. Can
you give me a quick bag check? What are you taking? And here's what I mean by bag check. You're probably the top 5 guy with the most paddles on the internet for sure. How many paddles are you going with? Are they going to all be the same? And then what do you do about clothes? Because like if you do well, you're going to run through like 20 shirts, 10 shorts, 100 socks. What are you taking?
I'm not the best at this, like tournament management. Like this is a topic in and of itself that is something like I could honestly do a lot better on. Like, but I'm trying to do better there with the supplement side of things. But yeah, I'll take like 2-3 shirts on the day of. I'll have 3 paddles with me, so I'll have my go-to, a backup that's the exact same. So I'll have 2 Prism Flash 16s, and I'll just have one of the 14s that I'm gonna play singles with. So I'll have 3 paddles with me. I'll always take a towel that I'll use during games to wipe off and stuff like that. And then I just bought this big old huge jug, like those water bottles. It's like a knockoff of, how do you say it? Tequila?
Takea, we need to get you a Takea sponsorship and water bottle.
Those are like $1 million, and there's lots of options on Amazon that are way cheaper that do the same thing. So that's about one of those. I didn't have a big one before. I just had small ones, but so that's what I'm taking. I do have a bigger bag. If we're talking bags, I've actually started like looking at a lot of bags recently just because I want like a better tournament bag. And so I got this. It's Carbon's like Tournament Pro Series bag.
Yeah,
I actually really like it. I have a few other bigger bags from other companies, but they're literally all the exact same thing. Like I'm sure they all get it from the same manufacturer in China,
right? But
I don't know where Carbon makes these, but it's different, and I like it a lot. So
my favorite ever. If you ever want to get into the bag making world, I used to nerd out when I was playing tennis on the bags. Look up the Nike Locker tennis bag. It's not even in production anymore, but it was like my favorite bag. It was a really cool bag. But that was my favorite back in the day. Now I just use the Carbon backpack. I don't have like a big tour bag.
I actually really like that bag too. That's kind of my day. My casual, just going to the courts. But tournament bags, it's nice to have a little more space.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
The first time you like break out this huge bag to a tournament, it's kind of awkward. But then you get there and you realize everybody has one. You're like, okay.
Yeah, if you're just showing up to the rec league and you got like the whole, you better be good. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel like a dork in some of those scenarios. But yeah, that Carbon backpack's solid. I have the same one.
Love it. All right, cool, so to finish this off, I have 2 fun ideas I wanted to throw your way though to finish it up.
Shoot them.
I don't know how we would make this happen, but I think that one of the brands should get all of the pickleball podcasters together somewhere, and we should challenge them 2v2. And we do like a round robin tournament. What do you think?
That would be dope if they fly me out.
All the podcasters. So what's funny is that you and I, because of me, are going to get wrecked a bit because there's pro players we got to play against. So we got to have legit teams.
Oh, we have to play the pro team podcast?
Yeah. But you got like Tyler and Jimmy. So we could just go to Jimmy the whole time. We could try, right?
They would smoke me. I don't know. Is Jimmy good at? I've never seen.
I think he's come out to say he's around a 4 or 5. Okay. So if I can get out of your way and we can just hit to him, yeah. And with Tyson's got to play with his wife. So we got to do Tyson and his wife.
There you go.
Yep. And we got to do Thomas Rettenmeyer and Travis Rettenmeyer and Graham. And Graham's a good player, but I don't think he's pro. He just owns a team. And then,
speaking of which, they stole our intro music.
Come on, guys! You didn't think to check the other podcast to see what the vibe is? They
didn't. They made a mistake.
I'm gonna DM them. Tell them to change their stuff.
It's my song. You're the one that found that. Is that copyrighted? Like, is that ours?
It should be.
Can we lawsuit them?
I'm pretty sure YouTube Music changed it to the Pickleball Effect intro. That's what it says. That's ours. All right. So here's the other thing. I'm going to throw this out there. I want the people in the comments to let me know too. In tennis, they have this great summer league that they'll do for amateurs, and it's combo league. And so it's a mix of 6'5", 7'5", 8'5", 9'5". It's a combination of your, DUPR or whatever. I would love to be able to play with someone like you in a combo tournament. And I want to know if other people would like that.
Wait, explain it a little further. So like,
so combo means that it's a max DUPR of the two of us. So you and I would have to play in like a 9, or we'd have to play above 8.5 or something in a combination DUPR tournament. And so somebody could have like
these are like odd numbers, because like I know that MLP, like if you sign up for an MLP event, they have like DUPR 20, DUPR 18.
But it's for a whole team.
It's for a whole team, but it's kind of the same idea, because like you could have 2 5-0s and 2 3-0s or something.
Yep. But if it's just you and me, you can't have 2 5-0s. You'd have to do a 5-0 and a 3-0, or a 4-5 and a 3-5 or something like that.
If you do like an odd number, like 9 or 7 or something.
Yeah.
So like all the events would be odd numbers, like a 9. And then that forces you to have these 2 different level of players.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care what number they choose. I'm just saying, would you play in an event like that at a tournament? Because like I would love the opportunity to play with you against another pairing. It could be 2 4 5s.
Supposedly like equal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That'd be fun, because then you're guaranteed that they're not going to be like crazy better than you or something like that.
Right, like we're supposed to be the same combination level. It worked really well in tennis. We used to do this summer after summer through USTA, and I think it worked really well.
Did you find that the weaker partner was picked on it and made it no fun, or what do you?
Here's what made it no fun is that, and this is what pickleball really did well, is that in tennis, if a 4-5 was serving against a 3-5, you're done. You're not getting that back. Like it was just that was pretty rough.
That's not the case.
Yeah, that's not the case. I think the drives could be much bigger. The consistency is going to be tough. But no, I mean, I think it was really fun. And what would happen is you'd have somebody who's like on the cusp of making the next level, like 4-0 or 4-5, and they could play at the lower level. So they play at 4-0 because they haven't really been bumped to 4-5 yet, and they get to play alongside like a 5-0. And I think it really helped the lower levels their game.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll finish it there, huh? Let us know in the comments. Let's get Combo League going.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next week.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da.